That was cool. Did you get that? Hello and welcome to Busy Bee TV. I'm your host Lucas Weekly, and this week we're continuing with the Tricopter version 2.5 build with part 3. Now if you haven't seen part 2, click over here, and if you're new to the series and haven't seen part 1, click over here. I'll give you a couple seconds to click on those links. Okay, in this episode we'll be going over how to fly a tricopter, and I'll give you some helpful tips so you don't crash. So let's get started.
Before you start flying, you need to make sure that everything has been tightened down. Check the zip ties holding on the motors, the set screws on the motor mounts, and most importantly, the prop collets holding the propellers in place. Use a pair of pliers and an Allen key to tighten down the prop collets like this. Now we're ready to fly.
First, find a big enough area to fly in that has very little obstacles. I find that my front yard is big enough for me to fly.
You want to try to get the tricopter as level as you can, because when you arm it, the KK board will use its orientation at that moment to know where the horizon is. If you don't have it level at first, then you will be fighting it to stay level as it thinks the horizon is somewhere else. Before you start flying, you need to know how to set the gyro gains. The KK board has 3 potentiometers on it that control how much the gyro is correct for small movements while flying. The 2 small dots on the knob show where it is set. Out of the box, KK boards are set at 50% gains for all the gyros. This is good for starting out, but they can be set for better flight characteristics. I will show you how to set the gyro gains in a minute.
Now we're going to arm the tricopter. The first step in doing that is to turn on your radio. Now we're going to plug in the tricopter. Wait for the motors to chime. Now we're going to take the rotor throttle stick, put it in the bottom right corner. Wait for the motors to chime one last time, and the tricopter is on. Okay, now we're going to run up the motors, and what we're looking for is any motors that are spinning faster than they should be. And so we're going to adjust for that with the trim. It'll just make it easier to trim in the air when we start flying. To take off, slowly increase the throttle up until the tricopter starts lifting off the ground, which is about a little bit over half throttle. Continue increasing the throttle to get above ground effect.
Wait, go back.
Get above ground effect.
What's ground effect? Ground effect in its simplest definition is the effect that the ground has on an aircraft. With the tricopter, the thrust from the motors is bounced off the ground and pushed back up. If the tricopter is too close to the ground, this updraft can change the thrust of each motor. For example, the updraft can push the air away from the props, creating an absence of air on one side. This will dip that side and cause the tricopter to crash. In landings, the tricopter can land perfectly, but then it rides a cushion of air coming off the ground, which makes it bounce back up again. We will get in how to avoid this later. Okay, back to the episode. To learn the controls of a tricopter, I recommend learning on a simulator or buying a small 4-channel helicopter like the Blade MCX2. You can check out my video of that here. Start off by learning how to hover in place. This is a useful skill when setting your gyros. As you fly, periodically land and increase the gyro gains a little. Turn the pot clockwise to increase the gyro gains and counterclockwise to decrease it. Continue doing this until you start to see oscillations when flying, as you can see here. The oscillations that you will see are very small, but the camera can see them easily. Once you notice these oscillations, back the pots up a little until they stop. Now the gyros are the most stable they can be. Only do this to one axis at a time so that you do not get false oscillations from other axes. Once you get good at hovering, move the tricopter forward and back. This will show you how much the tricopter moves for the movement of the sticks, and it also teaches you how to control the throttle to maintain altitude. When you're comfortable with each axis of control, combine them to make smooth paths that the tricopter flies. Experiment with the throttle to gain altitude and decrease it to create more complex maneuvers. Learning how to fly takes practice, but the battery only lasts for 10 minutes, so you have to land sometime. To land, bring it into a hover near you. Slowly decrease the throttle so it slowly descends, and the second that it touches the ground, kill the throttle completely to avoid bouncing back into the air because of ground effect. Never kill the throttle in the air because it will cause damage to the tricopter.
To disarm the tricopter, move the throttle rudder stick to the bottom left corner. This will turn off all the motors so you can go in and unplug the battery without getting your hands chopped off. And that's it. So to make something clear really fast, this series was intended for someone who wants to build a tricopter who has already learned the basics of flight with an RC plane or helicopter. Now, if you're brand new to the hobby, you probably shouldn't start off with a tricopter. What I recommend is starting off with an airplane. They're easier to fly in my opinion, and you can learn how to use LiPos, ESCs, and motors, which you can then use those skills to building a tricopter in the future. For those of you that this does apply to, I hope it helped. I hope you can build a tricopter because of this series. If you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments below. And if you like these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It only takes a couple of seconds and you won't miss any of my upcoming videos. So again, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.